So, I've played in bands for many years, and we always had the set list on the floor, and I realized today, when I was in my 20s, it used to be 20-point font, and then it was 30-point font. Now it's 40-something. Let's just leave it at that. So, thanks to everyone for coming. Thanks to the sponsors. Thanks to the Virginia Community Capital and the audience for being here. Let me first start by saying I love technology. Technology is cool. Technology should and can be used for good at all times. Having said that, I'm the technology guy who's not using slides, which is kind of some crazy irony going on here, but we'll just go along with it. If people call me a geek or people call me a nerd, I say thank you. I think geeks are going to rule the world, if they don't already. My original computer, so back in the 80s when I first started coding as an early teenager, I used to load programs and save them from cassette tape. It had a resolution of 256 by 192, memory of 32K, no internet. It was fantastic. Technology was cool, and it's got even better. I've been 20 years in technology. The first 10 years I was coding for various companies. The last 10 years I've been in leadership and executive positions. The last 3.5 years I've been leading all technology at a local company called Snagajob. It's probably not known to most people, but Snagajob is the biggest marketplace for hourly work in the US. We have 90 million registered users who use the site on a regular basis. Incidentally, I actually just left them a couple of weeks ago, so I'm looking for work. So if anyone wants to chat later on, come find me over lunch or find me on LinkedIn. So technology in itself isn't good or isn't bad. It's people who make technology bad, which is people generally make everything bad sometimes. So in the 80s, computers became mainstream. In the 90s, internet became mainstream. With that growth, we've seen everything from the good side of technology, which is knowledge and media sharing and email communication and social media. Everything's great there. There's a dark side to technology. We all know about this. We all know about online gambling, online porn. We know about fraud and threats and everything that's out there. Today, in the time we've got, I don't have time to focus on people who maliciously want to use technology. What I'm hoping is everyone in this room here wants to create technical products that are good, that do good for everyone. So I'm going to give you a few tips on how to improve the technology that you do use. And I'm going to focus on 3 areas where we can all improve technology. The first one being unintentional bias. The second one is socioeconomic impacts. And the third one is diversity of technologists. That's the people who create the technology. So let's focus on unintentional bias. And the first area I'm going to look at is the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, signed into law by George H.W. Bush in the 90s. It's evolved over the years, but the technology piece of it basically says that the internet should be accessible for everybody. There's no reason people with disabilities shouldn't be able to use the internet. The reality is, though, that's not the case. It could be something as simple as you have a certain color text on a certain color background, and people with visual impairments can't read that. It could be more complex that people who use screen readers to access the internet or access any software, that you haven't put the right alt tags in there, you haven't put the right tabbing in there. Any website can be fixed. I'm going to give you all a tip right now. Go to a site called webaccessibility.com, type in any URL. It will give you a score, and it will tell you whether you're compliant with ADA, and it'll tell you what you need to do to fix that site. I have no doubt that companies want to be ADA compliant. They probably just didn't add and budget that extra amount of work it took to make it ADA compliant. Another area is language. So I speak English, you all speak American, which I'm told is a version of English, but I'm not buying it, honestly. I've made mistakes in my career. I'm going to talk about one right now. So at Snagajob, we had software engineer jobs posted online. And we would put language in there that said, we want a ninja coder, which sounds cool, doesn't it? Like we want a ninja coder. But expressions like ninja coder, rockstar coder, badass coder, they all have masculine connotations. They don't appeal to women to apply to those positions. There are other words you could use, words that include connected, collaborative, enthusiastic. Those appeal more to women. If you want to improve the number of women that are applying for your position, think about the language. I'm going to give you another tip right now. Another site you can go to is totaljobs.com. They have a tool called a bias decoder. You can literally copy and paste any text into that tool, and it will tell you if there's bias in there. It'll tell you if you can adjust those words. So do it in your job postings. Do it in any of the content on your websites or any of your products. The next area I want to talk about is artificial intelligence and machine learning. So a bunch of you might glaze over on this. It's important, it's cool, everybody sees it all the time. What is it? First, I guess, is the first question. So with a machine learning model, you feed it millions and millions of pieces of historical input and tell it also what the outcome was of that input. And then when you go to the future, you feed input and it can predict the outcome. But here's the catch. If you feed biased, racist data into the system, that's what the machine learning model is going to learn. And it's going to give those same outcomes. So the way you have to do this is you have to have controls and governance in place. A lot of companies right now are jumping on the AI bandwagon. They're putting models out there very quickly. They don't necessarily have the governance in place to look at their output and make sure that it isn't biased. So let's switch up a little bit. Let's go to socioeconomic impacts. The obvious one that people think about here is internet availability. So I looked up some numbers, and in April of this year, there was a Pew Research results that came out and said 10% of Americans don't have internet access, which is bad. The number has come down significantly. The number's going to get better. There's always going to be a population who don't want internet access, and that's okay as well. That's a bit strange to me, but those people are like that. I actually think the bigger problem is not about whether you have internet access or not, because I think that's going to get resolved. I think it's a non-partisan issue. Everyone wants to solve that. I think the issue is around people's use of technology. People aren't trained how to use it. We just give people the internet and say, here, go, have fun. What could possibly go wrong? And yet there's a whole bunch of people out there who are just willingly trying to take your money, trying to steal your identity. We need to train people better how to use technology. We need to show what it's capable of doing. Not even just the negative side of it. We need to show them, here's all the wonderful things you can learn, and here's all the free tools and things you can do on the internet. I don't think people are using it to its fullest power, though. And then I want to switch now to diversity of technologists. So let's talk about recruiting. And when I mean diversity of technologists, I mean people like me at the leadership level, software engineers, quality engineers, product managers, designers, everybody who builds technology. What we have to do is we have to recruit better. So Google and Apple both publish the numbers of women that they hire each year into technology positions. Now, before I tell you the number, you've got to realize if they're putting that number out there, that means they're confident it's one of the best numbers out there. Both of them are at 25%. So 25% of the recruits in technology are women. I'll tell you my own numbers over the last 3.5 years. We were averaged around 10 to 15%. On one good year, we reached 20%. That's not great. So we need to get better at that. The way we found to improve on that, and it's not a silver bullet at all, is when we do have a posting, we will deliberately send that link out to minority groups that we know, and we'll try and push for them to apply to the position. What we also have to do as well is we want people on the interview panel who are diverse. There's no point having a whole bunch of white dudes on the panel, and that's all you come in and talk to. You need to see people who look like you in those roles. But that's recruiting at the company level. I actually think there's a problem at the education level. And so the numbers say that if you look at computer science alone, 81% of computer science graduates right now are men. 9% are African American as well. So that means 19% of women, 19% of computer science graduates are women. Did you know in the 90s that used to be 25%? So the problem's actually getting worse. It's not getting better. We need to resolve that. But the problem goes back even further. So you talk about recruiting in the company, you talk about education. It actually goes back before college to your school years. So there are social norms as young children before you've even decided on your career path. You know, there are companies like Gatorade said, be like Mike in the 90s. There's even a tag now for social influencer, for people who are trying to set the direction that you can follow. We need those type of people, but I would argue that parents and school teachers are probably even more influential in convincing people to follow that path. In my own example, I actually started coding when I was 13. I was making money at it as a young teenager, and it was cool. But when I went to high school, I had a chemistry teacher from 16 to 18 years old. He was fantastic, and for some reason I followed him and ended up doing chemistry as a degree. I even ended up with a PhD in chemistry. I came back to computers fairly quickly, but He influenced my life. He was a school teacher. It's at that age where we start needing to influence, the teachers and the parents need to influence children that technology is cool. So in closing, let me repeat that I love technology. Technology is cool. Technology can and should be used for good. There are 3 areas I talked about today, which were unintentional bias, socioeconomic impacts, and diversity of technologies. That's just 3 areas. That's the tip of the iceberg in the time I have today. I'll gladly talk to anybody over lunch if you want to spend more time and discuss some of the other things we can do in technology, but thank you everyone for your time.